So here we are. Look at it. Oh my God, she's got gurn face. If it isn't the woman herself, Julia Hartley-Brewer, and she looks like she's either gurning or she's taking a poop. She's having a little poop. Oh, just pushing it out. And I didn't make this happen. This is just the beginning of the video. This is her editors have chosen this as any starting pieces. Talk TV. Obviously, they concentrate on the talk and not the pooping, because if they did, they'd notice she's having a poop right now. And what's she going to be talking about? Well, this is called "How Dare You Use That Phrase?" Julia Hartley-Brewer's brutal clash over Israel-Hamas war. And Julia Hartley-Brewer will be speaking to
Labour leader
a very
important
important
on the
man.
Israel-Hamas war has come under fresh pressure. Shadow Minister Imran Hussein has resigned from the front bench, he says, in order to advocate strongly for a ceasefire.
One Labour member is worth 500 Palestinians.
This comes amid reports that rebel Labour MPs could team up with the SNP to try and force a vote on a ceasefire, which 1/3 of Labour MPs have defied their leader and called for.
1/3 of Labour MPs have stood up for the working man dying in the trenches. How wonderful.
I'm joined right now by former Labour
used to
MP,
be every one of them. I mean, it's
by
terrible.
The party before the 2019 general election,
Woo!
Chris Williamson.
There he is, the pilgrim. The pilgrim. He's gone round full circle. He's allowed back on the peripheries of the news now. Chris Williamson. Chris. What did Chris do? Well, Chris went fighting the Israel lobby. The Israel lobby was destroying the Labour Party from within so that the Blairites and the new Labour alumni could come back into power and push Corbyn out. And Williamson went, I remember him doing, just before he really got pushed out, he went and he revealed the PR firm at the beginning of Westminster that was causing all of the events to happen, that were like MPs speaking out about this terribly anti-Semitic leader, Jeremy Corbyn, which was all a load of bullshit, all a load of Israeli PR lines, so that they could get someone in power, so that they could eventually do what they're doing now. You have been tricked in many different ways, but you get tricked on both sides, so it doesn't matter anyway. Now the New Labour has been taken over. New Labour has taken back control, and that's what it really is nowadays. It's back to the Blair years. Just got frontmen in all the seats, all World Economic Forum aligned frontmen, and this man, Chris Williamson, is definitely not one of those. That's why he was kicked out.
Good morning to you.
Morning, Julia. Long time no see.
Long time no see. You used to come in the studios and chat with us.
You remember the days when we used to allow you in here and we used to berate you about being an anti-Semite?
To have you join us. Let's talk first of all about the resignation of this Labour front bench. I have to look him up because I've never heard of the guy. Imran Hussein. He's shadow minister.
Funny shaped head.
Some may say he may be the first of a number of front benchers who want to resign.
Oh, really? Who want to resign?
En masse resigning. A couple of days ago, the leader of Burnley Council and another 10 Labour councillors, they resigned, now sitting as independents, because they say the Labour leader, Keir Starmer, he should be advocating for a full ceasefire.
Of course, he's a Labour leader. Labour leaders advocate for ceasefires. That's what they do. Labour says, no, we don't want to go into a war. That's what Labour should be doing right now. It should be calming it down. It should be calming it down. And what's it doing?
In Gaza, and not simply for tactical pauses to get in humanitarian aid.
Tactical pauses. That's disgusting. They use that language.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think Sir Keir Starmer's got this completely wrong, but then he said he's a Zionist without qualification, and clearly that means supporting a medieval siege when he was.
And there you go. There you go. He's a Zionist without qualification. I mean, and his wife is in there. His wife is in there. I mean, what can you do? What can you do? He goes and he spends half his time in Israel, half his time in Britain. This is going to be your leader as they wipe out the Palestinians. Well done. You're going to vote. You're not even going to be voting in Keir Starmer because you want him. You're going to be voting in Keir Starmer because he's not Rishi Sunak. And in return, you're going to get the death of Gaza and the end game of Israel being allowed by us and others.
When he was asked the question on LBC whether Israel had the right to cut off water, cut off energy. He said, yes, they do have that right. He's trying
he
to...
did say that.
Well, he says he was answering a different question. Far be it.
He was answering it.
I mean, the question was very, very direct.
He was asking a different question that he wasn't asked. Can we say that about everything? I believe they should all die. Oh, really? You believe they should all die? No, I wasn't asking that question, answering that question. I was answering the question about the wolves. See, that's innocent, isn't it? Yes, because the wolves are innocent.
Do you support cutting off water and energy? And he said, yes, they have that right.
Right.
That is very direct. Obviously, now, do you see what Julia Hartley-Brewer did there? She went in for the defense of Keir Starmer when she's got no point for doing that. The only reason she's doing that is because in this point, she's meant to be juxtaposed to Chris Williamson. And so she has to start resisting what he has to say because she's going to make it so that she resists what he has to say.
Look,
so he was saying the right of self-defense. That's what he says. Anyway.
Well, but I mean, you know, his position in relation to Israel is on the record. I mean, as I've already said in his leadership campaign, he said he supported Zionism without qualification, and you know, the stance that he's taken on the war has been absolutely shocking, and indeed the stance of the Labour Party as a whole, has been absolutely appalling when we're seeing a genocide taking place before our very eyes.
Yes, a genocide, and
you know, no protests or meaningful protests are coming forward from the official opposition in this country, a party that traditionally had a very strong pro-peace element within it, but.
It's quite amazing that we're in this situation. I'll come out just before Julia Hartley-Brewer starts shouting at him. But it's very clear. It's very clear that this is not Labour anymore. This is not the Labour Party that I was brought up with, that I was brought up thinking existed. But back then, it had already been taken over. They just hadn't got it to this stage. So this is the evolutionary process of the same thing that we had when we were young. The real Labour disappeared in our eyes, but real Labour was never what we thought it was. If you go back in history, you see that things have been written into fairy tale.
Well, hold on a minute. I think the destruction of Hamas,
resigned or expelled.
Chris Williamson, the destruction of Hamas would actually promote peace, would it not? You said it's shocking.
No, it wouldn't, Julia, because you've got that completely wrong. Let me stop you there, because
you're going to destroy, like, how many innocent Palestinians have been killed. So to destroy Hamas, and that just creates more Hamas. It's such a stupid base argument that it should be completely beneath her, but she's not, is it? She's above it. She's above it.
Israel has been subjugating, oppressing and terrorizing the Palestinian people for 75 years, ever since it was established. And indeed, when Israel was founded, it was founded on the basis of expelling 750,000 Palestinians from their home, massacring many, many others. They then expanded still further in 19...
Did she just huff out? She just huffed the Nakba out. She went, Nakba,
1967, and the occupations, the illegal occupations under international law, the demolitions, basically people are just removed from their home.
Chris, we haven't got time to do the entire history of the Middle East.
Oh, well, that's a shame.
These are well-rehearsed arguments. Now, the point is...
don't then just say, though, Julia, that it's, you know, this is...
Well-rehearsed for a reason. They could be not going on for a long time because they're not what you're doing, which is trying to create it all about Hamas and what they did, because that's what the media have to do right here.
It's all Hamas, because the people that are responsible for the violence are
the only reason why Israel is bombing Gaza right now, and they've got to send IDF forces into Gaza City, the only reason they're doing that right now is because Hamas organised and sent thousands of terrorists to brutally massacre, torture, rape, murder, and take hostage.
No, it's not. There would be another reason, and that's only because the IDF allowed them into the country. There is no way that all of the defences suddenly dropped. No way. That is ridiculous. That is ridiculous. That argument is so far removed from reality, it is ridiculous.
Innocent Israeli civilians. No, you don't want to get into that, but let's talk about what happened 75 years ago.
No, because
Let's not go into international law, though, as well, because then you'd have to do Article 51 of the Geneva Convention and all of the rest of the things, and you don't want to do that, do you, Julia?
You're making a point that, this is all down to Hamas, as if, history started on October the 7th.
I don't know.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. You're revision. This is revisionism. This is what it looks like nowadays.
On October the 7th.
Let me just make
this point. But this latest war started on October the 7th, and it was declared by Hamas.
No, I'm sorry, you're wrong.
No, it wasn't.
Why did those resistance fighters make that incursion into occupied?
Yeah, they are
resistance fighters. Chris.
They are resistance fighters. However much you don't want them to be resistance fighters, they're resisting an occupation by definition. And again, this becomes semantics. So semantics is like this. Okay. He's using an argument that is semantically driven. So he's saying these are resistance fighters. Now that gives honor and gives anger to the other side. So that it creates anger, and then that anger comes out in the response, and then that response is easier to prove as being negative because, well, you've got them angry. On the other side, Julia Hartley-Brewer isn't willing to recognize that Hamas is like an obvious part of occupation, and that what Israel are doing are evil, and that they've been doing it for a long time, and that this reaction is part of an ongoing blockade of a small piece of land where people are dying inside and suffering inside. She's unwilling to note all of that down, and that sets off him. That's a semantic, because she's unwilling to think about it. They have to both make arguments that are strictly about the use of words, just the use of words. And so they carefully say things. And what we watch here is how, when those words hit into each other, what comes out of the other side. And that allows us to create our reality. It's like the building blocks of our reality. When we're looking at a piece of media, is through analyzing the linguistical usage and the definitions and how they intermingle, and then we create our own idea of what reality looks like. And so he is angering her with semantics, and she will anger him semantically, and this battle will cause this eruption in emotions in us and feelings in us, and we are prone to take a side. We're prone to, like, a binary solution option, like options one or t'other, and we will go with one side or the other that feels better to us because we want to bond within a group. But we should remember to listen to the words carefully, take out the arguments, and start mix and matching what is real and taking out all of the falsehoods out of both their arguments.
Because every single
resistance fighters don't behead children in their cots.
But that is rubbish, and that's
yeah, that is rubbish. Julia Hartley-Brewer is pushing out this line that was a fundamental. It's been pushed out by the president of Israel, Naftali Bennett. I think I would believe that most of the ex-heads of Israel have said it. It was from that one reporter that reported that 40 babies had been beheaded, and then loads of rumors afterwards that, oh no, they'd actually been burnt, and then loads of people saying, well, there's no evidence, is there? And then go, no, there's well, look over here, look at what they're doing over here, so that's the evidence. And all of these people who don't care about whether people look down on them or not, are still willing to use arguments that they have been proven to be not evidence-based and there to cause emotion, a motive argument. You could see that in the way her face is. Let's watch this interaction between the two, because he's saying that the beheaded baby's lie is a lie, and she's about to get very angry about the fact that he would behead babies. That's really what we're looking at. She'll take it to the extreme. You know, she takes it, how dare you? You're basically in that room. You're doing that thing that is an imagination of what could happen or what could have happened. But don't get me wrong. Hey, babies were killed on both sides. And it becomes, again, I'm pointing out, semantics. Was the baby beheaded? Was the baby killed? Was the baby suffocated? Was the baby shot? It is semantic arguments. We got to remember that this whole, all of these equations together, all of this thing we're supporting here leads to babies dying on both sides. The direction that they're walking, that Julia Hartley-Brewer is walking, in the sense of being her newscaster reporting on these things, and Talk TV and Sky News and all these, the narrative they're pushing goes down a road which leads to more babies dying. Because some people won't have freedom. And freedom, it burns inside you. And it explodes. And on both sides, babies die. Again, semantics. Was the baby beheaded? Now that this allows us all to use fallacies. Fallacies I will jump on too if I'm in the heat of the moment as well. It doesn't matter how they were killed. The lives were ended. It doesn't matter the narrative that causes emotion, unless you're just trying to cause emotion. And then once you're trying to stir emotion, you're no longer trying to base your understanding of what's going on within reality. And then you lose track of reality. We're here within this. We lose track. I lose track of a dead baby because it's not been beheaded. It's not been beheaded doesn't mean that the baby didn't die. The evil that was committed on all sides of this is evil. And unless you can, call it all out for what it is, you are, in fact, condoning parts of it. This is terrible what's happened here, so we must do that there, is condoning part of it. This happened here. No, it didn't happen like you said. It didn't happen like the words you said. Okay, well, it didn't happen then, is what's in your mind. Semantics, fallacies, all lingering around, all bubbling about, all causing arguments that are based on falsehoods and lead to us not having a proper resolution. Listen to us.
Chris,
because every single
resistance fighters don't behead children in their cots.
But that is rubbish. And
what do you mean, what's rubbish?
Been totally debunked. It's been
debunked.
No, it hasn't
been debunked.
No, it hasn't been debunked. The journalist who even made that allegation apologised because there was absolutely
the 42 figure was debunked.
I'm sorry, this...
Right, again, unfalsifiable claims from Julia Hartley-Brewer. Oh, pasty face over here. And what's she saying? No, the 42 figure was debunked. So the fallacy is, because the 42 figure was debunked and the other is unfalsifiable, that must mean it's true. Think about it.
It's just Zionist propaganda that we are, the mainstream media is regurgitating whilst the genocide is happening before
That's what you're doing, Julia.
And, you know,
Julia Hartley-Brewer is doing exactly that, but it's it doesn't even, she doesn't need, well, you've got to understand, and this is a lot of people don't understand, she doesn't need to be in direct cahoots with Israel. Her company doesn't have to be in direct cahoots with Israel. The narrative gets set by the big organizations, by the way the media covers it, by our whole history, by the history of how it's covered. It's reactive. So right now, all of these people are trying to get clicks, and they don't get clicks and say unless they say the things that people say, yes, that backs up my reality. What Julia Hartley-Brewer is saying is what I have been taught. And so it makes me feel comfortable to hear it. And I agree. I agree with it. I agree. I agree with it. So she has to say it, because otherwise they won't get those clicks. Trust me, I know. I know. If you say things that people don't like to hear, they come to you in a few years' time and they say, wow, you were right about that. But at the time, they shout at you, they scream at you, they have This is what as a journalist, if you're a journalist and you're not causing people to have some form of psychological meltdown, then you're obviously not reporting anything that's happening nowadays, because it's all like that, isn't it? And so you have to kind of like work out where the line is that you want to push to put your point across. Mine is history. I want people to get an understanding of why things have happened through the filter of history and through reoccurring themes in the past, so that we can see those reoccurring themes as they happen today. And everything's cyclical, so if you explain something far enough in the past, you always get to the modern day and find that the same thing is happening, and it causes people to go, wow, now I see the similarities and the nuance in a played out event of the past that I couldn't see in this half played out event now. A lot of what is happening over Israel and Palestine is really people not having a full knowledge of every aspect of it. And what Julia Hartley-Brewer is doing in this interview is trying to only give a very neat picture. From October the 7th, this war is from this point. This is all we're going to discuss. Let's not go back in history. This is all of the powder, and these are the players. This player bad, this player good, this player unjust, this player just. I set the rules for that I can win this game. It is a game. It's not real. The reality is, once upon a time lived two sets of people who were from the same people: the mixed multitudes who mixed with the Canaanites, who were called the Israelites, and the Canaanites, who the Palestinians are ancestors of, and you can tell that genetically. What you get is cousins killing each other, and it's quite a common theme throughout humanity. You know, we look into an image that is slightly representative of ourselves, yet ideologically differing, and we attack it. This is something that has happened throughout history. This is going to be a long one.
Completely factually wrong.
You cannot
factually
say that history
wrong.
Started on the.
I didn't say history started.
October.
The bombing.
Well,
look, you want to see Chris. You want to cease fire in Gaza. It would be great if there wasn't bombing of Gaza. The bombing of Gaza began in response to what Hamas resistance fighters, you call them, terrorists is what the murderous, raping, torturing terrorists is what the rest of us who are saying.
Murdering rapists, torturing terrorists, murdering rapists, torturing terrorists, murdering rapists, torturing terrorists, murdering rapists, torturing terrorists. It's really, I mean, when you give that description, he gives a description, you could see the semantics. Yeah, look at the semantics here on display. Murdering rapists, torturing terrorists, resistance fighters. So on the one side, you got murdering rapists, torturing terrorists, and on the other side, you got resistance fighters. And as always, in reality, neither of these two people are in the real world. Chris Williamson's off in his own world, and Julia Hartley-Brewer is off in the real world. The real world is a screen in the middle that you just can't see. It's a teeny tiny little thin screen with a guy on it going, it's more nuanced than both of what you say, and it's the rhetoric you use that makes you blind to the facts.
One, the rape allegations are not true. Two, the beheadings didn't take place.
Is there anything? Is there anything you won't lie about?
Okay, right. There is no way both of these arguments are going to be emotive. There's no way to get factual evidence of that, but 100% that I would say in my heart of hearts, and I don't want it to be in my heart, it's dark, it's sad, it makes me sad, but girls were raped. This war, what world are you living in? What world are you living in? Of course it was going to be rape. Of course it was going to be rape. Some of those girls were out in, the juxtaposition of cultural identities and the state of an actual physical, psychological, psychobiological state at that moment in time. A load of people at a dance festival dancing away high as kites in the early hours of the morning after being up all night, whizzing off their face, beer and a thing. And then suddenly a load of people come down shooting at them with believing that they're in some form of road to paradise where they must destroy them. You know that juxtaposition there, I promise you all sorts of events happened there. All sorts of events. So Chris Williamson is saying stuff that is like there's no rape. Maybe you're talking about one specific case, but that would be crazy to not think that has happened. Some of the hostages, some of the female hostages, will never be found. That's the way of things. That's the way of things. It's the way of things. Again, extreme. One screaming at the other, and the other is saying that the other is all lies all of the time. And the nuances in them, the reality is nuanced and is in the middle.
Is there anything you won't lie about?
People who are occupied have a right under international law to armed resistance, and every single
they have a right under independent. They have a right under international law.
Be careful, Julia.
Children and take.
Oh, be careful! Article 51 of the Geneva Convention. No, under international law, Israel doesn't have the right to murder children in their beds like they're doing right now. So you're already, here we go, we're heading to her faces are wonderful. We're heading towards this battle between the two now, where all of the pieces are known, all of their moves are known, and the battlefield is known so that they can traverse it without any problems. People put themselves in these situations for a reason.
You like to talk over people, but every single attempt at a peaceful resolution has been spurned by the Zionist entity.
The Zionist
back
entity.
To the Great March of Return.
You're not on a Corbyn rally now, you know.
You're not on a Corbyn rally now. The Zionist entity exists. I've always pronounced that wrong. I've always pronounced it Shaim. But Chaim Wiseman and Nahum Goldman and others were like they were there right at the birth of Israel, and they were the heavy Zionist contingent, and Israel got created on the wings of Zionism. Of course it did, and it's continued that way, and people talk openly about Zionism. So pretending it doesn't exist, Julia Hartley-Brewer, when Zionists in Israel are openly talking about it, makes you seem exactly what you appear to be, which is disingenuous.
Palestinians were marching towards the Israeli fence, and they were picked off like shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah, terrible.
Shot by Israeli snipers using exploding bullets. Right. Absolutely disgraceful. Shooting journalists, shooting
She's shaking her head, and it's true. She's shaking her head, and it's true. They were shooting people who were walking up to the border, and they were doing that peacefully. Maybe a couple were throwing stones, but it makes no difference. Exploding bullets. This is where you are.
People are attending people who've been shot. The Oslo Accord, again, has been totally...
She's got talking in the ear.
...by the Zionist regime. And so in a situation...
Oh, she's in trouble. She's being told that she's lost it. She knows she's lost it. She's having people shouting in her ear. There was a collection. Watch that as a collection of faces that she made.
Israeli fence and they were picked off like shooting fish in a barrel, shot by Israeli snipers using exploding
She's listening.
bullets.
She's saying
shooting
she's being
journalists,
told,
shooting medical staff, people who are attending people.
She's not sure on how she's doing. She's being told something.
Again,
she's looking up.
Right. Can we get back to today?
Can we get back to today right now? Can we get back to right now? Can we not talk about the past? Because the past is really inconvenient for the whole narrative. If I'm going to create a narrative, this is where reality breaks apart. This is where reality breaks apart. Watch her face. Watch how she is getting orders from above.
And so
look, she looks across like that, and she looks awkward. She's being shouted at, and she can't stop her. Julie, stop him! Stop him, Julia! Julia, stop him! Stop him, Julia! Julia, stop him!
I'm going to be off air at 1.
2,000 people, over 2,000. You talk about hostages. 2,000 Palestinians have been taken hostage.
They haven't been taken hostage. They're being held by the Israeli government.
Administrative detention.
Yeah,
in prison in Israel.
Oh, she's in trouble. She's in trouble.
What's that?
They call it, how dare you use that phrase.
I don't defend everything the Israeli government does now and has done. I'm definitely not a fan of Benjamin Netanyahu. However, I'm a big fan of... I'll let you speak for ages. I'm a big fan of Israel's right to exist, the Jewish people's right to exist. The trouble is, I don't think you are. And that's why
really?
You work quite happily.
There you go. The government. The attempt now is, okay, I can't beat you in any other way. Argument-wise, if I try to talk to you, your arguments are much more concise, much more cutting, because you can use fact. You can use fact with evidence, and it causes issues for the fallacies. The fallacies cannot hold up long against fact and evidence because, your argument falls apart. Look, she's really nervous now. So now she's going to concentrate on something she thinks she can win, which is that he is an anti-Semite and he doesn't think that Israel should have a right to exist, or Israelis should, that line, Israel should have a right to exist. Well, in what form, at what size, with what sort of political dynamics, with what like the idea is that if they're in occupied land and everybody accepts they're in occupied land, then they got to stop being in occupied land. The settlements in the West Bank have got to go. All of these are obvious things. This is obvious things, or you've just got to accept which side you're on.
The Iranian government-owned Press TV, Iranian government would quite happily see Israel wiped from the planet, the Jewish people eradicated from the planet, murdered. And you're quite happy to take...
Yeah, that is nonsense. The Iranian people have been some of the most peaceful people throughout history. An extremely interesting and dynamic culture. But of course, modern history shows that they do a lot of meddling, like, Iran-Contra with the CIA and Iran team up together while pretending that they're not working together. That's a good example of Iran, isn't it? Yeah,
their money. And I don't know how you can look yourself in the mirror every day.
Do you know where the biggest Jewish population lives in the Middle East, Julia, outside of Israel? Do you know that?
You're going to tell me.
It's in Iran.
God. Oh, God, Julia Hartley-Brewer is such an idiot.
I'm sure they're having a lovely time.
I'm sure they're having a lovely time.
About Iran and,
Iran
the fact that
Hamas and Hezbollah, who want the eradication of the Jewish people.
Iran supports all of the resistance factions. And indeed, I would believe that all decent governments should be supporting liberation for the Palestinian people.
Let's go back.
Because they've been oppressed for 75 years.
Let's go back. No, you don't want to go back, because they go back to 1917.
Oh, we're talking about crimes against humanity now, are we?
Yes, by the Israeli regime.
Let's talk about...
Absolutely.
Let's talk about...
Oh, she's really lost this one. He's such a professional.
Many, including Keir Starmer, are calling for sort of a temporary truce, a temporary pause, not a truce, a pause in the fighting to get humanitarian aid in. We can get aid in, of course, it'll be needed again in the future. Who do you think a ceasefire would benefit? Because the concern is, by those who are not calling for a ceasefire, including Keir Starmer and the Prime Minister of the Conservative government as well, is that actually a ceasefire only benefits Hamas, who can reorganise themselves and then can continue their attacks on Israeli civilians.
No. A ceasefire with no change and the same intention to blockade is going to have that. try not taking people's human rights away and giving them a bit of freedom, removing this certain settlements and coming to a better agreement with them, and treating them like humans, and then maybe you'll get a backwards and forwards that you'd like more.
People. Do you think that actually a ceasefire will in any way benefit the ordinary people of Gaza, ordinary civilians, including children?
Yes.
Well, they're being massacred on a daily basis.
They won't be being killed. What a type of... Yeah, I mean, that's again given in to knock out of the park. It's like, what benefit would that be? Well, so far it would have been what benefit of not losing 10,000, around 10,000, 7,000, 10,000. I don't know how many Gazans who have been bombed to death. So ceasefire would see a lot less death. Julia, a lot less death.
Of course, a ceasefire would be beneficial to the people living in
crazy
Gaza, let's remember.
Oh my God! Is she saying why are they being massacred? It's because they did it to themselves through Hamas. By the proxy of Hamas, they did it to themselves, so they deserve to be massacred. Is that what you're saying? Because that is what I keep seeing is impulsive, and it's mainly, I have to say, from female pundits who say a little sentence and gives the game away just a little bit. I think it's a sensitivity to losing in an argument. Men don't really realize when they've lost, and women realize when they've lost in an argument and start to say things that they shouldn't probably say. Maybe that's a gender thing.
It's a concentration camp.
It's not a concentration camp.
Well, I'm sorry, Julia.
Oh, you kidding me?
That phrase.
No, how dare you use that phrase? What, the fact that they've completely and utterly I mean, to replace the missiles with gas chambers, and you've got it happening in front of you. This is a genocide. It's a genocide. It is a genocide. This is Holocaust shit, man. This is trying to wipe out the Canaanites. I can promise you, it's in a few books. The Israelis have been trying to wipe out the Canaanites for ages. If only they knew they were 50% plus Canaanites.
How dare you?
Well,
how dare you?
I'm so sorry. Are Palestinians working gas chambers in Gaza?
Julia, what is the definition of a concentration camp?
I'm just so appalled.
People are penned in. They are not
seem
allowed
like
to leave.
Look, what is the definition of a concentration camp? So again, extremes. I agree with him. It is equivalent to being trapped into a small area. But here we go. Semantics. We use the use of words and what they mean. And so he comes up to the camera and he says, what do you think concentration camp means? And to her, concentration camp means just Jewish things. Doesn't even include all of the other people that were killed within the concentration camps, because she is a propagandist. So concentration camp is propaganda tool 1. They don't actually know what happened there properly. They know a version of what happened there properly.
Normal person.
Nobody is allowed
You seem like a normal person with normal values.
They have a fence around them.
And
they
yet
are
you
oppressed. They are regularly bombarded by the Israeli regime. What an absolute outrage. And how you can defend a regime which is behaving worse than Nazis, actually, in some respects.
Worse than Nazis.
There you go.
Yes.
Again, so still semantics. It's still semantics. It's the use of words and it's the use of their definitions, because he's saying they're behaving worse than Nazis and she's taking that as they are Nazis, equivalent to Nazis. He's saying they're behaving worse than Nazis, but the Nazis were pretty bad. I mean, but they're all pretty bad. Murderers are pretty bad. They dress up in all uniforms, don't they? I have to admit, Hugo Boss did make the other uniforms. I wouldn't.
Worse than Nazis.
Because what we are seeing, thousands of children are being murdered by this Israeli regime.
Why don't we just save time? Why don't you just come on this show and just shout, I hate Jewish people, and say
there you go. What a ridiculous people.
Joined the rallies in marches in support of a ceasefire, in support of the Palestinian people. What do you say about...
Oh, Julia Hartley-Brewer is one of the worst about. This has been one that she thought she could destroy him. And what she's done is she's using trope after trope after trope to attack his arguments, which are meant to evoke tropes. I think that's something that we should look at as well. His argument is attempting to evoke tropes so you can see through it. That is very interesting. I can see why it's done, but it just causes there to be this fracture where you lose track of nuance.
Then, Julia, because there are thousands of Jews who are utterly opposed.
She's lost.
There are thousands, tens of thousands of Jews in this country who are terrified about what is happening because of people like you who are basically saying you support terrorist organisations that don't think that Israel or the Jewish people have a right to exist.
The terrorist organisation is the Israeli regime. They are the terrorists.
They're a democratically elected government.
They're occupying force. Oh, democratically elected. What, by the Gazans? By the West Bank? And I think she realised what she said then.
A democratically elected government. They are not a prescribed terrorist organisation, which Hamas is.
Because the Palestinians living in Israel have not got a vote. So don't give me that nonsense about.
There are plenty of Arabs. If you're not an Israeli national, and there are plenty of Arab Israelis who are, you do have a vote in Israel.
Well, I'm sorry, Julia, you need to actually look that there are tens of thousands, if not millions, of Palestinians living in the area outside of Gaza who do not have a vote. And indeed, it's an absolutely apartheid regime. There's no doubt about that.
Apartheid regime. It's not an apartheid regime.
Yes, apartheid regime. Again, she is talking, she is defending the Israeli line. This is this is the product of Zionism, is you get media like this. The product of Zionism is like this pumped out media spew of pro-Israeli talking points and refuting any of the tropes that are evoked by the language of the you could say of the left.
In what way is Israel not an apartheid regime? There is nothing you can.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is.
There's human rights.
It's not just one or two people who think Israeli is an apartheid regime, Julia. That's insane. You are insane, truly insane.
The organisation has condemned its own government as an apartheid regime.
Even though Arab Israelis live freely in the country,
Archbishop Desmond
have
Tutu,
senior jobs, including senior judges, running the central bank. Apartheid regime, right?
Whoa! Wait a minute.
Including senior.
Wait a minute. What did she just say?
Even though Arab Israelis live freely in the country, have the vote, have senior jobs, including senior judges, running the central bank.
Running the central bank, Arab Israelis running the central bank. Wait, was it just an Arab? And then the Israelis got him to run the central bank? That's probably more like it, isn't it? I mean, this is just like Trope Evoke. It's a Trope Evoke.
Yeah, apartheid regime, right.
Archbishop Desmond Tutu said that it's a regime, the system there is the worst form of apartheid.
The worst form of apartheid.
Desmond Tutu.
But let me put it like this to you then. Let's put an analogy. Let's assume the government of this country decided that England was for the Anglo-Saxons and said that all non-Anglo-Saxons would have to move and live in Cornwall. And any Anglo-Saxon...
Go on. Go live in Cornwall. Go live in Bodmin. You're back with English people. We'll watch you from West Wales.
Anglo-Saxon heritage from around the world could come in to this country, and any of the 25% or so remaining in England who weren't Anglo-Saxons, they would be discriminated against. Would you call that racist? Would you call that apartheid? Would you call that wrong?
Because there are plenty of Muslims, plenty of Arabs who live in Israel, who are Israeli citizens.
That it's not true. What she's saying is not true.
And are just as appalled by you call some sort of armed insurrection what I would call, because I'm sane and not an anti-Semite, I would call
I'm not an anti-Semite.
Well, are you accusing me of being an anti-Semite then, Julia?
I'm wondering why someone would say some of the things you say.
Well, because I believe in justice. I believe in liberation for people, self-determination for people.
Final question, because we've got to go. Chris, finish talking. Final question to you.
Finish talking. That's the truth. That's the only truth that she said.
You also called on Hamas to release all of those hostages, including elderly grandmothers and babies.
Hamas have offered to release all of those.
No, they don't have to offer. No, that's not what I asked you. Offering,
oh, wow.
they have the hostages, they don't
You
have to
answer
offer,
her how she wants, Chris.
Israel has said there won't be a...
Chris, you have to answer how she wants, because if you don't say how she wants, then she'll tell you off.
Ceasefire, even a discussion of one until they get the hostages back. Do you call on now Hamas to release the hostages? They could do it today.
Hamas have offered to release all of the people that they took on October the 7th.
Look at her, she's ridiculous.
For the hostages that
You're
the Israeli regime have taken. And let's remember, they've increased
I don't know
the
who she...
Since October the 7th, there are daily raids taking place in the West Bank, which you never seem to talk about. You never seem to be interested. Around 150 Palestinians have been murdered by the Palestinian
Chris, we're going to have to go. You're not calling on Hamas to release the hostages, then?
And you're not
calling on Hamas.
When I hear you call on the Israeli government to release the hostages that they've taken and release
the governments don't. The Israeli government hasn't got hostages. They have
yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Yes, I'm sorry. What do you think administrative detention is then, if it's not a hostage situation? People are snatched from the street. Palestinians are snatched from the street, thrown in Israeli dungeons with no...
You are crazy, Julia. For no reason at all. For no reason at all. The Israeli government would never do anything wrong. There's no reason at all. Again, she's in a fantasy world. It's amazing. People believe it. But, I mean, it is cringeworthy to watch now, the two extremes, Mr. Trope Evoke and then the Tropes being Evoke.
No,
they were just sitting in the kibbutz equivalent.
And they can be kept there.
Chris, I've got to leave it because my blood pressure isn't going to take much more.
Nor is mine, Julia. And I'm shocked that you're not bothered about the appalling genocide which is happening before our very eyes.
It's genocide.
Word that comes out of your
focus is...
One day, Julia Hartley-Brewer will be looked back upon and ignored. That's true.
Is on
Tell you what, Chris,
resistance fighting.
I'll carry on. I'm going to chat to my presenter's friend. Chris, you go back. You keep taking the shilling from the Iranian government, and you know the one.
Well, you keep taking the shilling from the Israeli government because that's obviously happening. Oh, come on, Chris.
Girls for not wearing headscarves properly, and you live with yourself and you look at yourself in the mirror. I'm done. Chris Williamson, former Labour MP. Thank God. Not a Labour MP anymore.
Wow, that is not impartial report from Julia Hartley-Brewer, is it? That's not. That first frame actually gives you a clue to the entire thing, really. It really showed. That was awful. That was awful. How terrible that was. How terrible. Holy hell. Well, that was NEWSPASTY. Julia Hartley-Brewer punching herself in the face over and over again because that's how we do things nowadays. Thank you from me, Johnny Vedmore. NEWSPASTY. Share, like, subscribe, whatever.
Young generation like Prime Minister Trudeau, President of Argentina and so on, that we penetrate the cabinets.